The rain pounded the asphalt as I gazed out the gas station windows. It was yet another lonely night on my second job, an overnight shift I took to supplement my income. The digital clock blinked 2:17 a.m. when the door chimed, signaling the arrival of a customer, a tall man, about 1.8 tm tall with long, wet hair drenched by the storm, staggered in. His eyes, unfocused, wandered around the store before settling on the beverage section. He grabbed a tall boy and approached the counter, leaving a trail of water on the floor. "Good evening," I greeted, trying to maintain calm in the face of his disturbing appearance. He stared at me for long seconds before mumbling, What's your name?" I hesitated but replied, "Rob." "Rob," he repeated, letting out a strange laugh that sent chills down my spine. "I like that." He opened the can right there and took a long gulp, disregarding the store's rules. As he drank, I noticed his trembling hands and the strong smell of alcohol. He remained standing, drinking and mumbling to himself. The situation made me increasingly uncomfortable. "And what's your name?" I asked, trying to break the tense silence. He took a long time to respond, as if he had to invent a name. "Bob," he finally said with a crooked smile. "Where do you work, Bob?" I tried once more to strike up a conversation, hoping he would soon be on his way. His reaction scared me. A sudden, loud laugh echoed through the empty store. "Work," he snarled, his face contorting with anger. "The government took everything from me." I swallowed hard, regretting my question. But then, as quickly as it had come, the fury in his eyes faded. "I like you, Rob," he said, leaning over the counter. "You seem to know what you're doing." The enigmatic comment made my stomach churn. Something told me that this night would be different from the others. And I was right, terror was only beginning. The heavy silence that followed was interrupted only by the sound of the rain pounding against the gas station windows. Bob remained there, swaying slightly, his eyes fixed on me. Suddenly, he turned and staggered towards the aisles, muttering to himself. I tried to focus on other tasks, but I couldn't take my eyes off him. His presence was like a dark cloud hanging over the store. After a few minutes, he returned to the counter, this time with a somber expression on his face. "I did something very bad," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. My heart instantly raced. "What did you do, Bob?" I asked, dreading the answer. He leaned closer, the smell of alcohol almost suffocating me. "I need a place to hide," he mumbled, his eyes darting from side to side as if looking for invisible pursuers. Before I could react, Bob abruptly stepped back and disappeared down the corridor leading to the restrooms. I heard a door slam, and then silence. The minutes dragged on. The tension in the store was palpable. I alternated between glancing at the corridor and the front door, half expecting the police to show up at any moment. What had Bob done? Why did he need to hide? Suddenly, the lights flickered and went out, plunging the gas station into total darkness. My heart raced. With trembling hands, I grabbed the flashlight from behind the counter and pointed it down the restroom corridor. "Bob?" I called out, my voice barely audible. I didn't get a response. Slowly, I started to move towards the corridor. The restroom doors were ajar, and Bob was nowhere to be seen. I continued to the back door, my entire body tense with apprehension. That's when I heard Ida's soft dripping and the sound of wet shoes. I froze in my tracks, my blood turning cold in my veins. "Bob?" I whispered, barely able to get the words out. A sudden movement to my left made me spin around. The flashlight revealed Bob, his eyes wide and wild, his pupils dilated to the max. Before I could react, he lunged at me, screaming, "I'll kill you." Terror took over as I struggled to free myself from his grasp. Feeling his fingernails scratching my back, I managed to push him off and ran back to the front of the store, my heart pounding in my chest. This terrifying night at the gas station was far from over, and I feared what was yet to come. With my heart hammering in my chest, I ran to the front of the store. The sound of Bob's footsteps echoed behind me, mixing with the noise of the storm outside. I grabbed my raincoat and dashed out, the cold water hitting me like thousands of needles. Stumbling in the darkness, I managed to reach my car. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the keys. I finally got in and locked the doors, panting. Through the fogged-up windshield, I saw Bob's silhouette at the entrance of the gas station, his distorted figure blurred by the torrential rain. With trembling fingers, I dialed 911. "Emergency, what's your problem?" The dispatcher's voice sounded distant amid the roar of the storm. "Please help," I stammered. "I'm at the gas station on Main Street. There's a man. He tried to attack me, and I think he did something terrible." "Stay calm, sir. The police are on their way. Are you in a safe place?" "Yes, I'm in my car, but he's out there. He said he did something very bad." The minutes that followed felt like an eternity. Bob remained standing at the entrance of the gas station, a sinister statue in the pouring rain. The rain eased and I could see his contorted face twisted with anger and despair. Finally, I heard the sirens. 2 police cars emerged on the road, their lights cutting through the darkness. Bob backed away into the gas station. The officers approached cautiously, weapons drawn. I got out of the car, trembling, and quickly explained the situation. They asked me to stay put while they went inside. Moments later, I heard shouts and sounds of a struggle. My heart leaped when I saw the officers dragging Bob out. He was fighting violently, his eyes wide and wild, his pupils dilated to the max. "He's completely drugged," I heard one of the officers say as they handcuffed him. As Bob was put into the squad car, one of the officers approached me. "We'll need your statement," he said, "but first, you need medical attention for those scratches." Only then did I notice the marks Bob had left on my back. The adrenaline was starting to wear off, and the reality of what had just happened hit me full force. This scary experience at a gas station will be forever etched in my memory. The true and scary gas station stories I used to hear now seemed terrifyingly real. As I was taken away in an ambulance, I vowed to myself that I would never work the night shift again. The nocturnal terror I had experienced at this gas station was more than enough for a lifetime. It was a Saturday night, almost 4 in the morning, when I decided to fill up my car before heading home. The sky was pitch black, and the city streets echoed the silence of the early hours. I pulled into my usual gas station not far from my parents' house, grateful for the absence of other vehicles. As I walked towards the building to pay, I noticed a hooded figure passing by me. The short man abruptly stopped and stared at me. I felt a chill run down my spine. "What's up?" I asked, continuing on my way. He remained silent, standing still like a statue. Inside the store, I paid for the gas and bought a lottery ticket, trying to ignore the unease growing in my chest. The attendant, with deep bags under his eyes, barely looked up at me. I went back outside to start filling up, my hands trembling slightly. I looked around, noticing the ghost town that Atlanta had become at this hour. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the metallic sound of the gas pump. I finished fueling quickly, eager to leave that desolate place. I got into the car, starting the engine with a sigh of relief. That's when I heard it, a subtle noise, almost imperceptible, coming from the back seat. My heart raced, and a cold sweat broke out on my temples. Slowly, I raised my eyes to the rearview mirror. My eyes widened in horror as I saw the hooded man's face staring at me from the back seat. A scream tore from my throat, echoing inside the vehicle. In a panic-stricken impulse, I slammed on the brakes, making the car skid to a sudden stop in the middle of the deserted street. "Get out! Get out of my car now!" I shouted, my body shaking uncontrollably. I flung open the doors in a desperate gesture and started screaming for help, hoping that someone in the nearby houses would hear me. "Someone help me, there's an intruder in my car." As if in response to my pleas, porch lights started to turn on, and I could hear doors opening. The hooded man hurried out of the car, his eyes flashing with anger. "I could have slit your throat," he rasped, his voice rough as sandpaper. Some people started coming out of their homes, drawn by the commotion. The intruder, realizing he was at a disadvantage, sprinted down the street, disappearing into the shadows of the early morning. I stood there, frozen, watching him vanish into the darkness. My body still trembling with adrenaline, concerned neighbors approached, asking if I was okay. "I am now," I replied breathlessly, but there was a stranger in the back seat of my car. I briefly explained the incident, feeling the weight of the terror I had experienced. I thanked the people who came to help and decided to continue on my way home, still shaken by the incident. At every corner, every shadow cast by the streetlights, my heart raced. My eyes darted frantically around the streets, fearing to see the hooded face again. The rest of the drive was a blur of anxiety and constant alertness. When I finally pulled into my garage at home, I let out a long sigh of relief. I sat in the car for a moment, trying to process what had happened. I quietly entered the house, not wanting to wake my parents. In the dark living room, every shadow seemed to move. Every creak of the house made me jump. I turned on all the lights on my way to my bedroom, obsessively checking if the doors and windows were locked. Lying in bed, sleep wouldn't come. My mind replayed the events of the night incessantly. How had that man gotten into my car without me noticing? What did he intend to do? His words echoed in my head. I could have slit your throat. A chill ran through my body as I thought about what could have happened. That night, I vowed to myself that I would never again fill up alone in the middle of the night. The incident at the gas station had shown me how vulnerable we can be in seemingly safe places. The scary gas station stories I used to hear now took on a new perspective in my mind. Years have passed since that terrifying night, but the memories remain vivid in my memory. The gas station incident became a turning point in my life, making me reassess my nighttime choices and habits. One afternoon, while flipping through a local newspaper, I came across a headline that made my blood run cold. Gas station robbery spree terrifies community. The article detailed a series of crimes occurring in the same region where I had my scary encounter years ago. As I read, I recognized familiar patterns: a hooded figure, sneaky approaches, threats of violence. Every word transported me back to that night, reliving the terror I had felt. Could my aggressor have continued his criminal activities over the years? The episode I experienced has become part of a larger set of urban legends and true horror stories circulating around the city. Today, whenever I pass by a gas station at night, I can't help but shiver. The fluorescent lights, the silence of the early hours, it all takes me back to that fateful night. I have learned the hard way that true terror can be closer than we think, lurking in the most mundane places of our daily lives. My story has become a constant reminder that we must always be vigilant, even in the most unexpected moments and places. On that fateful night, fate led me to a solitary gas station on the side of the road. The air was heavy with palpable tension, as if the universe knew that something sinister was about to happen. I never imagined that a simple stop for gas would turn into one of the most terrifying experiences of my life. The fluorescent lights of the gas station flickered intermittently, casting unsettling shadows on the cracked asphalt. The silence was deafening, broken only by the occasional buzz of a nocturnal insect. As I filled up the tank, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. My eyes nervously scanned the perimeter of the station, searching for any suspicious movement. That's when I saw him for the first time. A gaunt, disheveled man emerged from the shadows, his eyes dull and lifeless, fixing on me with an unsettling intensity. My heart began to race, and I instinctively tightened my grip on the knife in my pocket. "Got any change?" he asked, his voice rough and raspy like sandpaper. I swallowed hard, trying to maintain my composure. "Sorry, I don't have any," I replied, avoiding direct eye contact. He didn't move, continuing to stare at me with those empty eyes. Time seemed to stretch as we remained in this silent impasse. Suddenly, a woman appeared beside him. Her face was weathered by time and addiction, a toothless smile sending shivers down my spine. They exchanged a complicit glance that made my blood run cold. In that moment, I knew I was facing a real danger, a horror that didn't come from urban legends or ghost stories, but from the raw cruelty of humanity. With trembling hands, I tried to start the car, but the engine only sputtered and failed. Panic began to take hold of me as I saw the couple slowly approaching. The woman with her demonic smile raised her hand, revealing a reflective object in the faint light of the gas station. My heart almost stopped when I realized it was a hunting knife, its blade glinting menacingly. "What's the rush, dear?" she asked in a voice too sweet for her terrifying appearance. The man in turn started to circle the car, his eyes never leaving mine. The reality of the situation hit me like a punch to the gut. He was trapped in a real-life nightmare, living through one of the true scary stories I had always feared. Desperate, I tried to start the car again. The engine finally caught with a roar, and I felt a momentary wave of relief. But before I could engage the gear, the man was already at my window, his face pressed against the glass. "Open the door," he ordered, his voice low and threatening. I could see the dirt encrusted under his fingernails as he tapped on the window. My mind raced, searching for an escape. I recalled the scary gas station stories I had heard, but none of them had prepared me for this. This was a real-life gas station horror, tangible and terrifying, and I was living every second of it. Adrenaline coursed through my veins as I struggled against the urge to panic. With a quick move, I floored the accelerator. The car lurched forward, barely missing the woman as she jumped out of the way at the last second. I heard a dull thud and a cry of pain. The man had been hit by the side mirror, but I didn't look back, focused only on fleeing that nightmare gas station. My heart was pounding like a runaway drum as I sped down the dark road, leaving the gas station and that terrifying couple behind. The dashboard lights cast an eerie glow on my pale, sweaty face. Every shadow on the road seemed like a threat, every curve a potential hiding spot for more horrors. The silence inside the car was broken only by the sound of my ragged breathing and the rumble of the engine. My mind replayed the events of the past few minutes incessantly. Those faceless man with his lifeless eyes and the woman with her demonic smile were burned into my memory. This night would surely become one of the true scary stories that people would tell. A vivid example of the actual scary encounters that can happen in the most mundane places. After a few kilometers, my nerves began to settle a bit, but the adrenaline still coursed through my veins. That's when I noticed something on the passenger seat out of the corner of my eye. My blood froze. There, glinting under the intermittent light of the road's poles, was the woman's knife. Somehow, during the confusion of my escape, it must have fallen into the car. Panic threatened to take hold of me again. What if they were following me? What if the police stopped me and found the knife? My mind conjured increasingly terrifying scenarios. This gas station terror had turned into a nocturnal pursuit, and I didn't know when or how it would end. Deciding to get rid of the evidence, I spotted a rest area ahead and decided to stop. With trembling hands, I grabbed the knife, being careful not to touch the blade. I got out of the car, nervously looking around. The area was deserted, only the distant sound of cars on the highway breaking the silence. I quickly threw the knife into the dense bushes next to the parking lot, praying it would never be found. Back in the car, I took a deep breath, trying to calm my still rattled nerves. The digital clock on the dashboard showed it was almost midnight. It had only been an hour since I stopped at that gas station, but it felt like an eternity had passed. I started the engine again and headed back on the road, determined to get home as fast as I could. With every mile that took me away from that nightmare gas station, I felt some of the weight being lifted from my shoulders, but I knew the memories of that night would haunt me for a long time. Finally, I spotted the familiar lights of my town. The streets were almost empty at that hour, and every shadow still made me jump. I pulled into my garage and locked the car, rushing inside the house. It wasn't until I shut and locked the front door that I allowed myself to relax a little. I sat on the couch, trembling as the reality of what had happened started to settle in. This wasn't one of the scary stories I used to read online. It was real. It had happened to me, and I could hardly believe I had survived. I picked up my phone, thinking about calling the police. But what would I say? That I was attacked by a scary couple at a gas station and then threw away the only evidence I had? Not to mention that I had fled the scene. I decided that, for now, I would keep this terrifying gas station experience to myself. As I prepared for a sleepless night, I promised myself that I would never again stop at a gas station at night. This nocturnal terror experience had taught me a valuable lesson about the real dangers that can lurk in the most mundane places. Looking out the window at the dark street, I couldn't help but wonder how many other true and scary gas station stories are out there untold. How many people have gone through similar experiences and kept silent, afraid of not being believed. One thing was certain: I would never view a gas station the same way again. The fear of gas stations was now deeply ingrained in me, a constant reminder of the actual horrors that can happen when we least expect them. If you enjoyed the video you just watched, you won't want to miss this next one. Click now and I'll see you there.